All right, guys, so Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, very famously said, as he described world-class fitness, he said that routine is the enemy. Somebody had a shirt on today, and it really made me think of how truly revolutionary this idea has been in the fitness world. So I want to kind of do a few videos on really understanding what this means to the just average person and the average person coming in here and working out 5 days a week. I want to be clear, anything that I talk about here as it relates to routine and adaptation, it applies to the 99.9% of you that are in here to be fit for the long term. This does not apply to specialists. If you're a specialist, a bodybuilder, a fitness competitor, an Olympic weightlifter, a power lifter, a specialist of any sorts, this is quite the opposite of true. Routine is your friend. If you specialize, your goal is to increase your work capacity in a very specific amount of very specific movements. So you're really thinking about increasing your volume over 2-3 years, kind of whatever your working career is. For the rest of us, routine is going to be the enemy. So today, what I really want to talk about is give you guys a very firm grasp on volume and adaptation. So the volume of your training and your body's response to that training, and continuing to see results through avoiding routine in your training. So quickly, understanding volume. I want to talk about this idea that weight training gives me one specific response and body weight exercises give me another response entirely. This is another myth in the fitness world that was sort of dispelled by this idea of avoiding routine, and really stems from a basic misunderstanding of training volume. So let's talk about this. Our hypothetical athlete here weighs 150 pounds, does 100 body weight air squats, a movement we're all familiar with, in 10 minutes for a total training volume of 15,000 pounds. Our same 150 pound athlete does 150 pound back squats, 5x5, in the same 10 minutes for a training volume of 7,500 pounds. So if you think about your muscular hypertrophy, so this is what makes your muscles expand and get bigger with weight training. In volume, so acute volume over the course of 10 minutes, you're actually going to experience more muscular hypertrophy by doing a body weight exercise at this volume, at 15,000 pounds of volume in 10 minutes. You're actually going to get quote unquote bulkier. Your muscles will get bigger with this training volume here. You actually have less of a training volume by actually doing weighted squats. Your legs are still moving the same levers regardless, but your total training volume is half when you're actually doing a weighted squat. Now, you're gonna have different hormonal responses and long-term metabolic responses to these two different things, but we're gonna save that concept for later video. So, understanding volume. Volume is volume. If you're working out for 5 days a week, which most of you are, volume is volume. And in this case, you really see that there's actually not a significant difference in weight training volume versus weighted volume, in so much as your total volume here, unweighted, is greater at 15,000 pounds than it is in the weighted version of this same movement. So that's volume. Adaptation. So the important thing to understand is adaptation. So my body is going to respond to 100 air squats. On week 1, I do 100 air squats. My body responds to that, and I adapt to this type of loading. Okay? So that means in week 2, I probably need to do about 10% more. So I'm going to do 110 air squats in week 2. Week 3, 120 air, so on and so forth. So the idea is that to avoid adaptation. So adaptation is meaning I stop to see results. So there's one thing to adapt in an acute scenario where I'll adapt from today's workout. I'll sleep, I'll eat. That's one type of adaptation. Long-term adaptation is what I'm talking about here. So I get accustomed to this volume and this loading sequence. I adapt to it. And my only option from that point is to increase that volume so as that I don't adapt to it. So at a certain point, I run out of hours in the day. This logically cannot carry on into perpetuity without injury, fatigue, or quite frankly, just running out of time. So bodybuilders, will use this kind of training template. They will build up that volume, but they're training for 4 or 5 hours a day, not 4 to 5 hours a week. So we kind of need to shift our focus from more traditional training methodologies. So your response then is to either increase that volume to avoid adaptation, or diversify how you get that volume. So again, going back to those of you training for 4 to 5 hours a week, a healthy mixture of both of these, equal efforts being put into both of these stimuli, will keep you from adapting to it. So if you're one of those people that when there's weight on the bar, therein you put most of your efforts, you're probably adapting to this stimulus. Those of you that believe that this volume, albeit a lower volume, somehow will make you bulkier, when in all actuality, a higher training volume will make you bulkier because you're going to have greater muscular hypertrophy in this scenario. If you're putting your eggs in either one of those baskets, it'll be about 12 weeks before you max out your body's adaptation, at which point you need to either diversify or increase volume. Most of us that work at least 40 hours a week don't have the time in the week to progressively overload that volume, in which case we have to diversify the sources that we get that volume, which is our training methodology in CrossFit. We're saying that to maximize your body's response to exercise, we're diversifying your sources of volume in order for you to see the most results. So, what's your takeaway? Understand volume is very important to understand. This mentality that if I move my body weight, somehow that doesn't count towards my muscles working, it's quite the opposite, actually. Typically, you get more volume in those days, and we'll see a greater expansion of your muscle cells, having them actually get bigger. But the key is to avoid that routine and diversify your sources of volume.